So close. Okay, I can see that our stream is live on our YouTube channel. So we will go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Beth Grazer. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for the Hillsboro School District. I am joined by Elaine Fox, our Executive Director of Student Services, Jordan Beveridge, our Chief Information Technology Officer, Olga Acuna, Executive Director of Federal Programs and Family Outreach, Travis Ryman, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services, Dale Spitzer, Assistant Superintendent over our schools, Michele Brady, the Safety and Emergency Preparedness Manager, and then I have a couple of my teammates here, Justin and Angie, who are helping me run this live stream and monitor our chats that are going in both the Google form and the live chat, which you can see on your screen. So to get us started, I am going to briefly go through the presentation that was sent out to all of you on Monday. We'll go through that real quick, and then we are going to just start posing questions to our panelists, and we're going to get through just as many of those as we possibly can in the time that we have, and promise to answer as many more in the coming days that we can. We know there's lots of things flying in here, and there's no way we can possibly get to all of them, but we are going to do our best. So let's see. Panelists, give me a thumbs up if you can see the presentation. Great. Okay. So the return to school options that we've been working on for the 2020-21, give you a little background, go through the guidance, talk about our preliminary return to school paths, some things that we would love to know from you, and our next steps. So as you know, we have been operating under significant restrictions since March of this year as a result of the COVID pandemic. And at the end of June, Governor Brown issued her most recent executive order stating that in-person instruction would continue to be subject to restrictions. And she delegated the responsibility for creating guidelines for how school districts were to go forth with creating their academic options to the Oregon Department of Education in consultation with TSPC and the Oregon Health Authority. As such, Oregon Department of Education released its Ready Schools Safe Learners Guidance for the 2020-21 school year. And in that guidance, it lays out a pretty particular plan for how districts are to go about creating their instructional model for the coming year. So currently we have 8 different district level teams that within them have several sub-teams, as well as school-based teams that are meeting weekly to work on various components of the plan, from the instructional delivery model to transportation, control of disease transmission, and more. And although there is still much work to be done, part of this process is ensuring that we share information with our various stakeholder groups and get their feedback as we go through. So please keep in mind that we have lots to do and several constraints on our planning process that include the health situation and or governor's orders at any given time, the budget, which still has yet to be announced by the state. We are hoping that they go into special session as soon as possible, but likely between August 3rd and 15th to determine what they are going to be able to provide, to K-12 education and transportation, the ability to clean as often and to the extent necessary during the day and between cohorts, and the probable need to go back and forth between a hybrid model and a comprehensive distance learning model, union contracts, staffing concerns, and more. So we need to be very flexible in our thinking and in our planning as we move forward. Right now, our draft plan consists of a 3-pronged approach. We are not considering a full-time in-person option for the beginning of the 2020-21 school year. Of course, that would be our desire to eventually get back to this type of model, but we are not able to do that based on the health situation at this time and due to physical distancing requirements for the buses and in our classrooms. So let me start off in the middle, which is our comprehensive distance learning model. And this is really the crux of the entire learning model, because this is going to be the robust part of the plan. There will be a comprehensive distance learning model in place that's potentially accessible to all students. And obviously those who choose to make that their full-time experience, they will be getting all of their instruction online. So students in this model alone will still be enrolled at their neighborhood school. They will be connected to specific classrooms, and those teachers will be the ones creating the curriculum. So the ultimate intention would be for them to return to their physical school as soon as we are able to, based on the health situation and other considerations. So the hybrid model, or as it's also known, a comprehensive distance learning model with in-person opportunities, would entail students attending their physical schools 2 or more days each week, and then they would be engaging in comprehensive distance learning on the other days. So our hope in this type of model would be that we could get our youngest learners, hopefully students in K through 2, in a more perfect world, which hard to say perfect, but up to K through 4, attending every day, because we know how important it is for that foundational learning in those younger grades. So students in the other grades would be attending 2 days a week, and then students with special needs or those receiving ESL services or other students who need additional support would attend 3 or more days a week. So the third option would be for students to enroll in Hillsboro Online Academy, which is its own school. It's a bit unlike other virtual options that are out there. Almost every other virtual or online option is a charter school, but Hillsboro Online Academy is an actual accredited school. In fact, it was the first non-charter virtual school to open in the state of Oregon in 2012. So we've had 8 years of experience with this model, and this year have expanded to cover all of the grade levels K through 12. So again, this would be their full-time option. Learning is based on published curriculum as opposed to lessons that their individual teachers are creating. So that comes from Florida Virtual, Odysseyware, Edmentum, other provider individual. And the intention would be that students will remain online even when other physical schools open. Now that doesn't mean that you're absolutely locked in, could never possibly go back to your neighborhood school. We would hope that that students could stay at least through a semester, because there are some staffing implications which would make it a bit difficult for students to move in and out of Hillsboro Online in short time periods. Okay, I know this is difficult to see on, in short format, but this is our infographic that talks about those different prongs of the approach and has some bullet points that explain certain aspects of each option. And then here is a draft plan, some sample student schedules. So for those young learners, whatever grade levels we are able to accommodate with transportation and classroom space, those students would be physically at school each day with a multitude of safety measures in place. And the other grades would be split up into cohorts. So with cohort 1 attending Mondays and Thursdays, and cohort 2 attending Tuesdays and Fridays. And when those cohorts of students were not physically at school, they would be doing comprehensive distance learning. And on those Wednesdays, those days would be available for staff to collaborate, do professional development, and for our custodial staff to do additional cleaning. Again, for those students with special needs or needing additional support, they could potentially come on that Wednesday to receive that additional support. So things we're interested in for our stakeholders: what do you think? How do you feel about this plan? What do you like about it? What concerns you? What option are you likely to choose for your student? Um, what are your concerns or needs around childcare, and how much is that driving your decision of which model you are going to choose? One of our big constraints, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is transportation, and the extent to which we can free up bus space uh, directly correlates to how many grade levels we can serve in our schools. So we will be asking, if you live in a busing zone, do you have the capability of transporting your child to and from school? And do you have any additional feedback? Some of that, obviously, we're getting your feedback through forums like we're having tonight. We do have a feedback module on our blueprint planning webpage. And we will also be, at the end of the month, sending out a survey which is connected to your online verification of all your personal information, so that we can get in touch with you. Very important. And you'll be able to answer some of these questions there as well. These are our public Q&A sessions. This is the third of our public Q&A sessions this week. Some additional sessions will be taking place with affinity groups next week. And then our next steps are to continue working on the logistics of our plan and incorporating feedback following the health status and the governor's guidelines at any given time. ODE will be releasing updates to their Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance next Tuesday, July 21st, and again on August 11th. State budget decisions, as I mentioned, will have a big role in our planning. And let's see, we need to submit our final plan to ODE by August 15th. And hopefully you've been keeping track of our weekly updates on the Blueprint Planning website. And the address of that site is there. So I know this will be further addressed by our panelists, but just in case, part of what I'm seeing in my peripheral vision with all the comments coming through is about people just feeling like they're just very uncertain about our ability to stay safe in a model that brings students back to campus. Please know, again, that we are paying very close attention to that. And there is a possibility that that model cannot be implemented right at the beginning of school, that it might be something that is a delayed implementation for us, that all students may begin in a comprehensive distance learning model. We don't want to bring students back before it is safe to do so, both for our students and for our staff. So again, I know that our panelists will speak to that more completely, but just thought I would give that little preface. So on that note, maybe we will dish our first question to Michele Brady, our Safety and Emergency Preparedness Manager, because she can share information with you on some different health and safety protocols that are going into this whole plan's development.
Okay, thank you, Beth. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I just would like to start out by reiterating what Beth said, that we are in close consultation. We have a strong partnership with both our local public health agency, which is the Washington County Health Department, as well as obviously ODE and the Oregon Health Authority, which is the state health agency. We take direction from them, and although we're planning and we're making a plan for when it is safe for kids to come back into the brick and mortar buildings, this does not mean that that is what our plan will be for sure in September. We'll be taking guidance from our officials, but we need to prepare for the eventual time that we do end up going back. So what we have done is the Oregon Department of Education has the blueprint plan, and they have outlined some key principles that we have started working on. And so I'm just going to briefly go through those and maybe talk a little bit about each of them. The first one is physical distancing, which we're all doing every day when we're out in public. And that is keeping staff and students at a safe distance from each other. The recommended distance is 6 feet in person, and then on the bus, it's 3 feet. And you may be wondering why there's that difference between 6 and 3. And it's been described, part of the reason on the bus is that, there's the high seat backs. And then we're able to really pull in a lot of fresh air from having all the windows in the bus open. So that really helps cut down on the risk of transmission. So putting just plans in place on how we're going to keep kids as best we can 6 feet apart is something that we're doing. Hand hygiene, of course, that's very important, and we're always pushing that and wanting to educate staff and students on the importance of that. We will be having students, for instance, use hand sanitizer before they come into the building, and then once they've gone into their cohorts, which I'll talk about next, they will then wash their hands with regular soap and water for 20 seconds right at the start of the school day. And then more frequently than what they're normally used to doing in a regular school day, for sure, times like before and after lunch, before and after going to recess, before and after any use of shared equipment or objects, or mixing with other cohorts, if that even happens. Which brings me to the next one, which is cohorts, which are basically just small groups. We want to try to keep kids in consistent cohorts throughout the day to help cut down on the risk of transmission. So kids who ride the bus will be on a bus cohort, and then when they get to school, they'll then transition to a classroom cohort. Depending on their grade level will depend on how many cohorts they might be in. Generally, probably a couple, maybe at the upper grade levels, and probably one at the elementary level. Protective equipment. So those are things like PPE, face coverings. The requirements right now are for staff, all staff, to wear a face covering. So they will either be wearing a face covering or a face shield if they prefer that. And then so we'll have those available for all staff, and then we will have a mask, face coverings available for any student who wishes to wear a mask. The guidelines right now, as of today, are that the recommendation is for grades 6 through 12 is recommended that they wear a face mask, but it's not required. So again, as Beth said, we will be getting additional guidance. And as you know, this situation has changed, it's fluid, it changes every day. So those rules could change in the future, but right now, the recommendation and the requirement is not to require it for students. Let's see, we are doing environmental cleaning. So I mentioned that we work really closely with the county health department. They've provided us with a really extensive environmental cleaning checklist of when to sanitize, when to disinfect, and what we need to do for each areas in our building, how frequently we need to do them, and then what we need to do if we have a case in one of our schools, a positive case, what we need to do from there as far as cleaning. We've also, one of the requirements is for us to set up an isolation or a sick room in each of our buildings. So we have our nursing team working on guidance to help administrators, just find that room and find that space. And that space will be used separate from the health room, and that's so that children who have to come to the health room for non-infectious reasons can utilize the health room safely. And then we would have a separate area that would be shared with staff to take care of any student or staff member who became sick at school and needed to kind of self-isolate until they could go home. And then the last two areas are contact tracing. So I know you've probably heard that in the news with the health department. When they get a positive case, they'll do contact tracing to kind of try to see who else that person has been around that might be have been exposed and need to be maybe quarantined or watched for symptoms. And so we'll be assisting the health department when we do go back to school in tracking information throughout the day for our students. So we'll be keeping a list of what children are on the bus that day, potentially even where they're sitting on the bus. And then when they come to school, we'll be tracking where they are throughout the day in their cohort, who was in their cohort that day, what teachers were with that cohort that day, so that if there is a case, then the health department can easily has all that information we can give to them, and they can know exactly who they need to contact for further steps. And then the last piece that we're still working on is what our screening and health checks will look like when kids come to school. It is required that we do some kind of a visual check on students when they get on the bus or when they arrive at school. So we're looking at all the different options of how to do that safely and what exactly that visual screening will look like. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Michele. I think this will be a question for Dale. So can you talk a little bit about how our comprehensive distance learning model is going to be a better experience for teachers and students and families than perhaps it was for everyone in the spring? What training is going to be in place for teachers to make sure that they have what they need to feel supported in that model?
Thanks for the question. So at the end of last year, we were able to survey students, staff, and parent and community members to get their opinion about the experience. That feedback has been very helpful, and I think we saw some patterns in all stakeholder groups, and some unique to students and some unique to teachers. So that's really driving our professional development plan. Part of the blueprint plan is to create a professional development structure that enables our teachers to be the best distance learning teachers that they can be. I think they did a fabulous job considering we had to flip on a dime and create that, but I also know they wanted to have more time to do a quality job, as well as more resources available to them to engage students and meet those needs. So we have a plan that we're working on that has 3 buckets around engaging lessons online, the tools to do the work, and some structures around distance learning. We heard from families that there was a lot of concern if you had a 4th grader and a 7th grader and a 9th grader. That experience was very different, and that can be challenging to families, and that's something that we can do a better job streamlining. So that's one of the components of our professional development plan. We also heard that there are some families that are not as comfortable with some of the resources, the technology resources, and we also had some challenges making sure everyone had appropriate Wi-Fi access, as well as the Chromebooks. So we've been entertaining and shared with our board last night our desire to have a soft start to the year, basically giving ourselves a few more days at the beginning to connect with families and students and make sure that they know how to negotiate the technology, they have the technology, and this will also give our teachers a little bit more time to plan these great lessons as they look at what standards they need to teach and in what format will best meet student needs. So working on a plan, we're excited about it. Hillsboro School District teachers are amazing and have great faith that they'll be able to meet the needs.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Maybe a bit of a follow-up. This was stated more in the form of a statement, but I think it could easily be addressed. So there's a concern about the stress that having both a hybrid and a comprehensive distance learning model at the same time might place on teachers. And how would you address that?
That's a concern of ours, and a concern that we've heard from teachers as well. So we know no matter what, we will be teaching our students in a comprehensive distance learning model. So we want to definitely make sure that we create that structure, that system, to do a really great job with our distance learning. So we are spending a lot of time, like I said, with professional development. If we get the opportunity to be with our kids, we will use that opportunity to go deeper with the curriculum, do some of those amazing things that we know enhance learning, whether those are debates or science labs or opportunities to work collaboratively with a group. So we're looking forward to that time. We know that due to busing and due to the changing situation, we're not sure if we'll be able to get every student in consistently. And so we want to make sure that we continue to offer a robust distance learning program and then maximize the opportunities to be with our kids to do great things.
Thank you. Elaine, can you maybe address the options for students on IEPs? Like, how can parents feel good that their students are getting the education and support that's going to best suit them during this time?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We really are continuing to focus on the needs of individual students through this process, and we continue to hold our values of access and inclusion during this process as well for all of our students, including our students with IEPs. And the primary vehicle for our students to be in school is going to be with their general education classroom and teacher, as it is most of the time when they are just in a typical school year. In addition to that, they will have distance learning opportunities. And in addition to that, as needed, they will be able to access Wednesdays for any extra services that they need that can't be fulfilled in the other days. And so there's sort of those three ways that they can access their learning and their IEP goals.
All right, thank you. I've seen a couple of questions that are along these same lines, wondering about if their child is in one of the various options, like, do they only go to school? Do they only have school a few days a week or whatever? And I think the thing to keep in mind is every student has school 5 days a week. It's just a matter of how they're accessing that school, that education, whether it's through comprehensive distance learning, through Hillsboro Online Academy, or a combination of the distance learning and perhaps a couple of days on site. So, and one that actually came in the other day was, if I choose hybrid model for my child and they get sick, like, does that mean that they access 3 days of education through comprehensive distance learning? And the answer to that would be no. If your child is sick and they can't physically come to school on a day they were supposed to be at school, then they can access the comprehensive distance learning. So it's there for everyone all the time, and it's just how much you are accessing that. Okay, so probably back to Dale again. Couple of questions around K2. Can you explain the logic for having K through 2 on campus with regard to safety? And can they really be expected to follow the guidelines? Because they're so young, the distancing and all the hand washing and everything.
So I'm not sure I'm the best one to answer the safety portion. So I will dish this to Michele. She, as a registered nurse, has more experience with supporting our youngest friends. I think the rationale for desiring them to be on campus is that we heard loud and clear from our parents that it was incredibly challenging for parents to teach their kinder through second grade students and to engage them in quality distance learning, their attention spans. Our kinder first and second grade teachers are magicians of engagement and monitoring students. And so without them, it makes it really difficult for families to get the same type of gains. We know that the foundation skills of reading and math concepts is foundational to students' overall success. So it's our desire to try to serve them in a differentiated way in order to help them meet that third grade reading benchmark. Regarding safety, I'm going to dish that one to Michele.
Okay. Well, I think that the first thing is that the kids will be in smaller class sizes than they normally would be in a regular school year. So they will be much easier to manage in that respect. And then we'll just need to do a good job of you know, we'll be monitoring them when they wash their hands to make sure they do it correctly, and just that adult oversight. And then I think this does bring up a good time for me to mention that that we do really want to partner with parents in the community, and we want to empower you to help us reduce the risk. So, you know, talking to your kids about the importance of washing their hands and, you know, respiratory etiquette. So coughing in your sleeve and, or coughing in a tissue and throwing it away and washing your hands. And those are all really important things that we all need to learn. And so we just, you know, we hope that we can work together to educate our kids and teach them all the necessary things that we need to help keep them safe.
Okay, can you talk a little bit, a little bit about the cohort sizes for different grade levels that you would anticipate?
So we need 35 square feet, so approximately a 6x6 space for each student. So that's dependent upon the room size. So in analyzing the room size across our district, it looks like on average it's about 20 students per cohort, and some rooms are as small as 17, some, you know, are beyond 20. But at this point, we're looking at about 20, and we'll be paying special attention to each school and the specific sizes of those rooms.
Okay. How about grading? Are grades going to be assigned this year?
So that was a decision by the Oregon Department of Education to suspend grading. So that wasn't a Hillsboro School District decision. That was something that was
You mean
a
in the
requirement.
spring, right?
Oh, excuse me. Thank you so much. In the spring, yeah. That switch in the spring was under ODE's directive. So as of this moment, it is not in the blueprint. A decision around grading hasn't been decided. It's our hope that we can grade, because we want to be able to share with students and with parents how students are performing related to their learning and the standards.
Okay. Are we going to try to keep siblings on the same cohort schedule once we get to that point?
Yes, absolutely. We want to try to line that up for families. We had about 20% of our high school students say that they were concerned about the schedule moving into the fall, because they take responsibility for their siblings. And that's something we know is a concern of theirs. It's also a concern of ours and parents as well. We want to respect that. So we will be looking at ways to line up siblings and people in the same household in order to make that consistent and predictable for families.
Okay, thank you. This one's for you, Travis. All of this seems to be potentially really negatively impactful on our historically marginalized groups of students and families. So can you talk a little bit about how any plan that HSD creates will guard against that?
Yeah, thank you, Beth. So we've been interfacing with historically marginalized and underserved groups as we go through this process. To name a few groups that we've outreached to and will continue to outreach to would be families of students who are experiencing disabilities, families whose students identify as Native American, Asian Pacific Islander, Black or African American, our migrant and bilingual PAC, our Parent Advisory Committee. And so I really want to thank the input and the liaisons who have facilitated those meetings, and the input that we've gotten has been important for our plan. I also want to say that there is a potential on the educational side for this to really grow opportunity and achievement gaps. Students who are behind reading, for example, we need to attend to them accelerating in their reading skills so that they can catch up to grade level and be successful in the future in their schooling. We know that when there are fewer days in the school year, students' learning is slowed. And so we faced that last spring, and we hope that our plan will help mitigate some of that loss or some of that delay going into this school year. On the human side, we know that certain populations and communities within Hillsboro and across the country have been hit hardest by COVID-19. And the teams that are planning our return to school are doing so that academically students can be successful and be supported in their learning, but also so that students and staff can be safe. We who are planning the instructional models that we're talking about tonight and the transportation plans, we have children, we are employees of the school district, we have health conditions that make us vulnerable. We are members of communities that have been hard hit by COVID-19. And so all of us making these plans and interacting with different stakeholder groups, we have safety as our first priority. And so although we have plans in place, it doesn't mean that we are advocating for unsafe working conditions for teachers and staff. And it does not mean that we're advocating for unsafe cohort situations for kids. We're going to rely on our medical professionals to give us guidance on what is safe. We've been ordered to create these plans. And so tonight we're hoping to communicate with the community what these plans are and get feedback and input on them. But please know that these plans could be delayed based on the best thinking of our medical professionals. And we'll stand ready to take their guidance on that. So I hope that on the academic side and on the human side, that accounts for how we're thinking through our vulnerable students and families.
Thank you. So Jordan, several students and families had some difficulties with technology in the spring. So how are we planning to maybe make that an easier process for them come the fall?
There's a few paces. We will have a call-in available for technical support. We did open one for our Spanish-speaking families later in the spring, but we'll have that for all families come the fall. Then we will also there are some families that only received maybe one Chromebook for multiple students. We want to make sure that we get a Chromebook into every student's hands that needs that. And so that all are able to individually work on their assignments and do work and so forth. And they'll need those if we ever do come back into the hybrid piece, do that work as they go back and forth from distance learning to hybrid. So it's important every student gets one of those. And then we also have many ways that we can try to get families online. If they don't have access at home, we still have hotspots available that we can give out to families. And we'll be advertising that come as we get closer to the start of school to make sure families are taken care of. We also have the Comcast Internet Essentials program where we can assist families that qualify with paying for Comcast service for up to 6 months. And so we'll be working with that in the fall as well.
All right, thank you. So Michele, a question that has come in several times under the umbrella of that response to outbreak, or somebody has been determined to be positive for COVID-19, what happens at that point?
Great question. So we are expecting, again, we're working very closely with the County Health Department and the Oregon Health Authority. We're expecting some outbreak guidance from them next week to kind of give us some of the nitty-gritty details. But what I can tell you is that what it's looking like, at least at this point, is that if a student or staff is identified with a positive diagnosis, the county will do their contact tracing. They reach out to affected parties within 24 hours for the most part. And they're telling us that it'll be a fairly low threshold for cases. So, it could be 1 or 2 cases and we would take some sort of action, which might look like having the cohort isolate for 14 days. But again, this is just all theoretical at this point. We don't really have a lot of concrete data from them yet on exactly what the plans will be. But we will have what I can tell you is that you will know if your family has been potentially impacted by a positive case. The county has gotten really good since in the spring. They've beefed up their contact tracers. We obviously have a lot more. Yeah, that will be ready.
Okay. A lot of families asking if there is still availability at Hillsboro Online Academy. And is there going to be a cap, and just what do they need to know about that option?
So definitely there is room at HOA if that's family's choice. Again, it's a great program because it's in our school district. It's one of our schools. So just like any other time, if we have more students in the program right now than we have staff, then we will hire or move staff to serve student needs. So we invite any family that is interested in that option to enroll. It will help us make sure we staff and train our teachers to be prepared to serve students.
And can you talk a little bit about, so we have Hillsboro Online Academy, and there is established curriculum for various grade levels or various subjects or whatever. So why is it that we need to, or that it's beneficial in any way to have teachers kind of culling together their own lessons for students? Why wouldn't we just utilize the published curriculum for everybody?
So the Hill Online published curriculum, Florida Virtual, it's, if you were a student there, you would see that the teachers still enhance the curriculum because it is a published curriculum, and just like any curriculum that we have, whether it's a textbook or online curriculum, it's not going to serve every student's needs. So the teacher will continue to enhance, tweak, remove pieces, add pieces in order to meet the students' needs that they are serving. We have curriculum for our students and our staff's use. Some of the curriculum we have do have electronic components. At elementary, we just adopted a new literacy curriculum, and the math curriculum that we're using also has online components. So there are already some online components that we can pull in, but our teachers are masterful and they know their students and they know how to meet those needs. And some people prefer kind of a more packaged curriculum as a baseline that's already online, and some people prefer having their teacher create lessons or adapt some of the tools that they have to meet student needs. So I think it's a different version of teaching.
Okay.
Can you add to that a little bit? There's a couple of things that we've learned too about school choice, is that a lot of families find that they want to attend their neighborhood school and they feel connected to their neighbors, and the kids know the students in the neighborhood. And I noticed that students, even in the spring, when we just lifted up quickly an online option, were able to connect with their peers during the morning meeting and learn together with the kids from their neighborhood and their neighborhood school. We also are able to continue dual language education and some of the special things that we do in HSD that aren't necessarily available from Florida Virtual or another school system. So I think a lot of our community will value our HSD approach to distance learning, and then be able to interface, like Dale said earlier, with those opportunities to learn in person as soon as it's safe to do so. So just wanted to make sure that that relationships piece and the bilingual programs are in there.
Thank you, Travis, for that addition. And that made me also think of the fact that the virtual curriculum is mostly for the core classes. It's the social studies, science, math, language arts. And so oftentimes teachers in comprehensive schools are able to kind of merge some art activities or PE or music or some other kinds of activities. So people prefer to experience with their children.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about what the day might look like for secondary level students, middle school and high school students in a hybrid model?
Yes. So at this moment, I'll talk about high school first and then go to middle school. So at this moment, again, remember we're working on a robust distance learning model. So high school currently has 8 classes. And so what we're currently looking at is potentially having students just take 4 classes quarter 1 and 4 classes quarter 2. They would take the same class, 4 classes quarter 1 that they take quarter 3 and quarter 2, quarter 4. The main reason for that is it allows us to do better cohorting if students only have 4 classes. And they can also go deeper with the content over a quarter. And then, for example, if you have math, one of the concerns about taking math for like a half year is if you finish math in January, it's possible you wouldn't have math again until September. We know that lag time is really hard for students to retain. So that's why we split the quarter 1 and quarter 3 up. So students would just take 4 classes that we've already have their forecasting sheets. They would have 2, again, robust distance learning. When they come into the campus, they would take 2 classes with the same group of kids. So if Miss Fox was teaching art and I was teaching math, I would have 20 kids for math while she had 20 kids for art. And then we would cross the hall and she would teach the kids art and I would teach the kids math. And then in the afternoon, they might have Miss Acuna for robotics and Mr. Ryman for social studies, and the same sort of experience would occur. So students would have at most 2 cohorts that they would be a part of. And we're looking at the same model at middle school. They have a little bit more of a teaming structure. So the goal there is to hope that the 4 core teachers, math, science, social studies, and language arts are lined up in the course. So all 4 of those teachers would have the same students, both AM and PM.
All right, thank you. Michele, I'd like to just go back to the question of masks, because I'm seeing a lot of chatter about masks in our 2 forums here. So let's just get real clear about what the deal is with masks. So under 12, kids cannot be required to wear a mask. They would all be strongly encouraged to wear a mask. And if they did not bring one, we would have masks there for them to utilize. Is that accurate?
Yes, except the current guidance now, it's a little bit different. It's very confusing. I'll grant you that, because some of the guidance that is currently in place, like when you're out in public, is a little bit different than what the guidance is for school as of this moment right now. So the blueprint directives say that students who are in grade 6 through 12 are recommended that they wear a mask. But any child that wants to wear a mask, we will have a mask available. And we're not requiring any child at this point to wear a mask.
Okay. But staff required to wear a mask or shield unless they have a medical exemption. Students all strongly encouraged to wear a mask, and we will have them every day for students who will wear them and did not or could not bring them from home. Stopping just short of require. So I think there was maybe a misconception that it's just like, well, just come to school and we don't care if you're wearing a mask. I mean, the expectation is that you're wearing a mask. It's just that we don't have the teeth by way of statute or guideline from an authoritative body necessarily to require that, or to make that a factor that would send a child home, for example.
Correct.
Okay.
And Beth, because we don't have that as leverage, we talked today too about creating a culture of positivity around mask wearing, including masks with school logos or superheroes on them, depending on the age range of kids that we're talking about. And while those ideas sound silly, those of us working in schools and parents understand that the cool mask might go a long way. And if we can engage parents and families in that conversation about social responsibility in this area, I think we can take a lot of ground there.
Great. Do we have any knowledge of what might happen with sports and extracurricular activities in the school year?
So hopefully if you're a high school parent, you received an email this afternoon just explaining that because Washington County was not moved to stage 2, that the opening of preparatory play has been put on hold. We have also heard that OSAA, our athletic association, is hoping to make a decision on fall sports by the first part of August. So at this point, no decision's been made yet.
Okay, so in elementary school, how would lunch, recess, and specials work?
I'm nodding, saying yes. Those are things we need to iron out. We actually have been talking so much about transportation and the safety protocols that we haven't too far into that. We do know that we need to maintain social distancing, so the probability is that students will eat in their classrooms, and lunch will probably be delivered to them in order to maintain safety for the students and the staff that serve them. Recess we know is really important. We want to make sure that kids get moving and get outside and have that free play. We need to make sure we have sanitation protocols in place to make sure that the next group of kids that come out to enjoy that equipment are also safe. And what was the last portion, Beth? I'm so sorry.
I don't know. I'm trying to look at these.
Okay. Anybody remember what was the last part?
Next?
It was lunch, it was recess, and something else.
I think it might have been
Oh,
special.
specials.
Oh,
yeah,
thank you
sorry.
so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, so all of that is yet to be determined just because we're not exactly sure how many hours we get to see our kids. And I think our music and PE teachers did a fabulous job offering online activities for students to engage in. And that might be something that we collaborate with, but we know having our kids move from their classroom to specials and back is safety. And so we need to really think around what we might be able to do in order to provide those opportunities for them.
Okay. There was a question about whether or not our model or schools in general are tied to the phase 2 reopening or any of the phases that have been identified at the county level or at the state level.
I think I can take a crack at that. Right now, schools are working with county-based health authorities to fill out the first 3 sections of the blueprint, which are all around health and safety protocols. There's a difference between what more metro area counties and cities are facing than some of the Eastern Oregon, more rural counties in Oregon. And we have different population numbers. We have different numbers in terms of COVID. And so right now, we are asking for some support from the state to have more of a connection between the phasing of counties reopening and the decisions being made about schools. One of the things that's disorienting for folks is that based on what county you're in a different phase, but the conversation from schools about schools seems detached from that phasing. So my answer right now would be no, it's not connected directly, but that we're looking for state health authorities to support schools more directly rather than deferring to the county health entities to do that for us individually per county.
All right, thank you. So a question about whether or not distance learning has designated hours. Like, or is it just happening at a certain time every day, or do students determine when they access that? How does that work?
We predict that there will be a combination. Last spring, the Oregon Department of Education released guidelines for the amount of time that they expected teachers to have open office hours and some recommendations about synchronous learning and asynchronous time. So what we did try to do, especially like at the high school level, is to have specific times that teachers might have, like a first period if they wanted to have kids synchronously. So not all teachers were saying, chime in at 11 o'clock, but really trying to stagger that so that we could offer opportunities for kids to engage with their teachers live or in small groups when possible. So that's guidance we're looking to see if we get from ODE in the next iteration, which comes out on Tuesday.
All right, and will there be AP and IB courses offered this coming school year?
Yes.
All right, well, that was fast.
I know, I like the yes and no ones.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope so, because my daughter's got a class.
Yeah, and there was also a question around college counseling, and maybe just the whole notion of how social emotional support is going to be delivered to students, in addition to concrete things like counseling and career prep, things like that.
Things like that. Those are big. So Brick Nova is leading that arm of the Blueprint Plan and doing a great job coming up with some great resources for teachers and counselors to use with the social emotional learning. That's a really big portion of the plan that we are to address, because we know that the social and emotional needs of our students are really important. So there's some great tools and resources, and we're excited to dive into some training around that. A lot of the social emotional learning happens with elementary around morning meetings, but the new language arts curriculum also embeds a lot of those strategies and skills. In the middle school, they have advisory, and we're hoping to continue that as a structure. And then in high school, we're really looking at 2 tools, including one set called the World of Work. And it really is about those social emotional skills as it applies to self and community as we think about work and beyond. Additional supports will be offered for counselors and our career and college counselors, small groups, individual supports as kids need it, and continuing to focus on college and career pathways. When we had our students fill out the survey, they said if they were to come back in the fall in a shortened kind of experience, they would first prioritize the core: social studies, science, language arts, and math. Second was just math instruction. Math online is very difficult, and we're very aware of that. And then their third goal was really to continue to focus on those college and career pathways. You know, our district goal is to help all kids graduate career and college ready, and so we will continue that goal and the work around that goal as we move into distance learning in the fall, and hopefully in-person opportunities.
Thank you. So we had a question about, will distance learning be in place all year long regardless, or if we are able to go back to full-time in-person school, will that go away?
I think that goes back to the relationship between us and the state and local health authorities. We're assuming that comprehensive distance learning is going to be required for us to get school going this year, and it could be in a distance format. As soon as we're able to do in-person instruction, we'll do so. If a miraculous event occurs and COVID is eliminated, there's a possibility that we could go back to school the way it was. But one thing that we've learned is that this may be the first time that all students in our system have wireless access and Chromebooks in their hands. And so I don't think we would undo our robust set of offerings online. We would probably invite students back into the schoolhouse to learn, but it would be in a tech-enhanced way that moves us forward into the future.
Okay, well, we have 2 minutes left, and I just maybe would like to invite the panelists to say a few last words. There could be something that you feel is important that we didn't cover during the session that you would really like our viewers to know. We still have almost 1,300 people watching the live stream, so please share your final thoughts. Elaine?
I think my final thoughts are really just that we continue to hold the values of inclusion and access and opportunity for our students who have 504 plans and IEPs, and we know that some of them are challenged by these changes in systems in different ways, and we are working very hard to meet their needs however we possibly can. Their teachers are working very hard and are amazing and really care about their success, and we're really excited to see them back however we can see them.
Thanks, Elaine. Olga?
Yes, thank you, Elaine, for that. There was a question in relation to whether we would still hold parent meetings. for students who are on IEPs and EL students. I just want everyone to know that we have a team of family engagement liaisons, family outreach liaisons in the schools, ready to support families in any way, shape, or form, whether it is with resources within the school or outside in the community. Please access them as much as possible. We will also coordinate district-wide family engagement events. So stay tuned to that.
Thanks, Olga. Michele?
I think I would just like to say that we have safety in the forefront of our minds, and we are doing everything we can to plan for as much as we can so that we're ready when we are able to come back into the schools, and do what we can to mitigate as much risk as possible.
Thank you. Jordan, did you have any final thoughts?
Just over the next weeks, we will be reaching out to families to make sure that they have the connections that they need, both technology-wise, so all students have their Chromebooks, that they have home internet, that if not, that we would help them try to find a way to get that. And finally, that we have the correct contact information and so forth, and that everyone has a parent view account so that they're able to look at grades and keep track of their students' progress online. And so if you don't have that, we will be working to get everyone set up.
Great. Dale?
I think I've talked a lot, but I just would like everyone to know that we care about students and we miss our students, and everybody's really concerned about the safety, and we're working really hard to create a model that provides for a high quality education as well as attends to the health and safety of our staff, students, and our families.
Thank you. Travis made a note to me that he wanted to cede his time, but did you still agree to that?
Yeah, I'd like to give my time to Olga to tell families how they can get connected to wireless or resources in our community. Olga, can you provide a little of that information?
Yes. Again, we have a team of family outreach liaisons who are ready to provide information and, accessing the technology, the internet, if it is services through our district or support services out in the community. We have community partners that are ready to support us with the family engagement efforts. So reach out to your schools, your school liaisons, your school staff, and ask who those liaisons are if you are in need of very specific resources.
Great. Yes, and please stay tuned to our website, both the district website and our blueprint planning website for updates. And once again, we really appreciate all of you taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. We are capturing all of the comments and questions that came through the chat, as well as the Google form, and we will be combing through those and creating FAQs out of those that we will add to the FAQ document that's on our blueprint planning website. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.